All right. We are back, episode 3 of the Ordered Liberty podcast. Ryan, how have you been?
Man, it's been an interesting week. A lot of work, a lot of stuff happening in politics, and I've been sick. So, a,
Oh
a heck
boy.
of a lot going on, but I'm on the mend and happy to be here, buddy. How you been?
Hey, rocking and rolling myself. Yeah, it's same over here. Crazy busy. I'll share some of the details in a little bit because it's exciting stuff. But yeah, just got back from seeing my folks down in Florida. We are back in North Carolina now, just in time today, and ready to have a great show. A lot
Yeah,
happened this week, so a
and I
lot
got
we're gonna.
I got 2 fingers of nature's cold remedy, so I
That's
think
right.
we're gonna be in good shape.
I gotta get mine situated. But before I do that, what do you say? Should we get our special guest panel in?
Yeah, let's bring them up.
All right, everyone, say hello to Alex Straight and Tyler, the average debate enjoyer. Not great, just average.
These
Hey
are,
guys.
just by way of introduction, Alex is, I think, one of the first people on X that I connected with and actually started talking to rather than just posting back and forth. He's a fellow deist and a fellow natural rights enjoyer. So a lot of commonality with the stuff that we cover, particularly, American philosophy. So really great to have him on the podcast. And Tyler is the rare. I think you describe yourself as a leftist. I don't really think you are, but you the rare common sense enjoyer in the debate sphere. Most of the people who do online debates are toxically debate bro brained, and Tyler's managed to stay sane. So welcome, Tyler. Good to have you here, guys.
Heck yeah! No, we are super pumped to have everybody here. Real quick, I want to, if you got them, quick shout out on the drinks of choice. I'm rocking with the Membre Mook. It's French. A good solid $6 from the good old Sam's Club. A good little red wine. Enjoying. Me and Ryan are enjoying the libations. I don't know Tyler and Alex if you are joining us, but
You're
Yeah.
reminding me that I actually forgot my drink.
oh,
I think I have some water somewhere.
There we
I'm
go.
consuming the finest of water. This is the Food Lion discount brand.
that's right.
Ooh, that's good. I'm normally a Scotch whiskey guy, but tonight it's a rum night, so that's what we're doing. Hoping that it will carry me through a few hours of talking and make it so that the plague that's been consuming the East Coast doesn't bring me down mid podcast.
That's right. It's a brief upper before you crash for the night. But yeah, well, real quick, let's. I know Ryan, you gave a brief intro to both Tyler and Alex, but I wanted to give them an opportunity. Just really, I think what I'm most interested in meeting all these new people in this space is seeing the commonality of how folks end up here, and I'm seeing a lot of things that a lot of common denominators. So I want to turn to Alex first, real quick. Just kind of give us the brief backstory on who you are, what you do, as much as you're willing to share, and then kind of what led you to being on here with us tonight.
Well, I'm kind of OG YouTube basically. Back I used to make videos on YouTube and upload them when it was 15-minute max videos. I remember it was a really long time ago. I mean, we're probably talking about 15 plus years ago. And I was making videos back then. I haven't made a video for 8 years, so this is kind of a big deal for me to actually get behind the camera again and actually start talking about stuff that matters, because that's what I was doing for a while, but I got out of it. And what I was trying to do back then was to try to basically grapple with losing your worldview, basically having a crisis of faith is basically what happened to me. And then I basically joined the kind of new atheists, the agnostics. I don't know if you remember, if of course you do, the back in the day when there was, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and the intellectual dark web and that kind of stuff. That's really what I joined the internet as, and then I kind of fell out of it for a while, and then I joined Twitter basically, and the reason why I joined Twitter was because I was basically following Elon Musk essentially was the reason why I ended up on Twitter, because when he was starting to float the idea of buying it, I was interested in kind of landing over there and seeing what was it like. And that was about 3 years ago, and it has been an absolute. It's been quite amazing to see what has happened with Twitter and X, and be part of the community that has bubbled up there. And that's where I met Ryan, basically.
Two deists in the wilderness.
Yeah,
I think at the
exactly.
time that I met Alex, he was the other deist I had met. So it was and I think now we're up to like 7 or 8. So
Yeah,
we've quadrupled since then, but numbers are still low.
fastest growing in the world, right? As far as a percentage goes,
exponential growth. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's basically exponential growth. I won't take up too much time because I want to hear Tyler as well. But what brings me here is I'm very, very interested in talking about politics and talking about like what, because that's essentially what I've been doing for the last 15 years, is trying to build my worldview and understand, to be able to go forward in life confidently, essentially, because 15 years ago everything was shattered for me and I had no idea what was true and what wasn't true, and I just was lost. And when that happens to you, when you 180 like that, where you kind of wake up and you realize that you're not really where you want to be, and what you thought was true is completely dissolved, a full disillusionment. It can give you a fervor for finding the truth. It can give you this kind of this fire under you, and that's basically what's been happening to me for the last 15 years, is sampling different ideologies and really going out on Twitter and X and just taking positions and debating them and exchanging ideas and just going into the deep end of it for a while. And that's why I'm here. I love your guys' platform and your guys' formula for exchanging ideas, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to just picking your guys' brains on all of these kind of political and philosophical topics that to me are super important, because I had nothing for 15 years ago. So I can yield the time to Tyler. I want to hear what he has to say.
For sure. Yeah. Thanks, Alex. Go ahead, Tyler.
All right, mine's started around, I want to say, second term of Obama. I started paying attention to politics, left-winger all the way, born, raised, indoctrinated, you could call it. If in schools, all my teachers were in a union and also did Democrat activism for the party. So it was destined to be. Around the time of Bernie Sanders, I was kind of a fan of him because I saw Hillary as kind of more a moderate choice that you'd pick in the general. Nothing was too wrong with her. Just, you push for the more extreme and then kind of settle with the moderate. But people didn't settle. And I was like, okay, well, the people that are very angry at the establishment, I guess I can see where they're coming from, but disagree. And then that anger kind of grew more and more. Then Trump won, and that anger took over the party. And suddenly the party that was calling the Republicans obstructionists my whole early adult life was now being the obstructionist in a way that was inexcusable, in a way that did not hold the standard that they preached for multiple years. And the Kavanaugh hearing was really what did it for me, when they started accusing him of gang SA. I decided it was probably best to part ways with the general party, but I still hold all the same ideals. I still like the FDA. I still like the public schools. I still like all these things the core Democratic Party was there to represent and still is there to protect when they actually do get threatened to some degree. But I don't want to abandon the left. I don't want to give them the keys to the boat and say, all right, steer away, see you later. But at the end of the day, I just can't side with it anymore. I can't defend as much as the cult of Trump personality exists, the anti-Trump Trump personality cult is probably worse to deal with, because not only are they just as obsessive, but they're angry about it. At least the Trump obsessives are happy because their guy won and they're fun to be around. But at the end of the day, I realized the entire establishment that was feeding me these things, I use the term indoctrination loosely. It isn't really indoctrination. It's more just kind of the Republicans pounce narrative over and over. Every time the Democrats do something wrong, it's the Republicans pouncing on them, where when Republicans do something wrong, it's reported straight up. It's just a little bit of, and we just covered today on one of my podcasts, the Nuzzy and Liza thing that's been kind of breaking out on Substack. Two very prominent journalists that were big Democrats scolding everybody about COVID and about Trump things with things with women, ended up being giant degenerates that were out screwing everybody they could get their hands on. She's the one that RFK wrote love notes to, if you're familiar with that story. So it turns out she was doing that with other presidential candidates, going around banging them, and just kind of, these people preach to you how to live, and then they live a more degenerate life than the normal people. When I realized that, it just kind of shattered my image. So I don't think I changed my stances. I just think we need to clean up to get back to these public and private institutions having integrity, to where people can actually trust them. I understand where the right's coming from, so I just kind of vote with them now. But I don't think I'm one of you guys. I just, at the end of the day, I still want what traditional Democrats do. So,
yeah, and I think that's a good segue to the topics that we're going to be focusing on today, because a lot of what's going on, at least how I view it, is that underneath the culture wars and the wedge issues and the pouncing back and forth, there's a legitimate moral divide that's happening between the left and the right. And part of the reason that we talk about the American moral proposition so much on this channel, certainly, is that there actually does have to be a unifying moral framework that binds the country together. If you don't have that, then every political issue is a life or death issue. And that's where we are right now, because you can't let the other side get power if you don't share a common moral framework. It's too risky, right? And I think both sides are in that place right now, where they're saying, like, Jesus, if the other side gets power, God knows what they're going to do. And that, I don't think a country this big with a national government the way we're set up can really operate that way for long. So we're looking for solutions, and this channel is kind of our small contribution in that area, and we'll see what happens.
Say small but growing, which I'll take that opportunity to shout out Ryan's channel. If any of you are not subscribed on Ryan's YouTube yet, get him there. He's at 400 right now. We got to get him to 500 so he can pay us all a lot of money in exchange for our support.
Yeah, got to start getting those bottom feeder YouTube dollars, right? It's the way I'm going to do it. I know I got my $15 payout from X the other day, and I was like, "Ooh,
oh yeah,
it's all worth it now."
Yeah, so definitely. Well, hey, we appreciate everyone for being here. Looking forward to a great show. Yeah, as was mentioned, a lot of great topics for us to get into tonight. But as is the common practice, we've got to start off with a bit of a history lesson, and it is Order of Liberty number 3, which means we're going to dive into Federalist Paper number 3, talk about what we got going on in there, and see if there's any nuggets of wisdom we can glean for our discussion today, and our topics for today, and any other topics. So Ryan, why don't you take us away? What do you got for us?
So going in book report mode, Federalist Paper number 3 is John Jay, again, writing to New York, and New York was the addressee of the second Federalist Paper as well. And he was writing, really, it's actually an apropos topic to talk about today, about really the risk of foreign interference in the nascent government. And the idea that if you didn't have, like, why do you need a federal government? And the answer is that if you don't have one, then mighty foreign naval powers can play you against each other, right? You might have a situation where New York wants to tariff England, but Virginia desperately wants a trade deal with England. And now Virginia can play New York against Virginia. Sorry, England can play New York against Virginia, play the colonies against each other. And in that way, each state could end up being a proxy for a European power. And the concern was that if you didn't have a unifying federal government, you wouldn't be able to resist the power of these states as they exercise soft power, as they perhaps had citizens come over and immigrate and then, take up arms against you later. There had to be a national solution to this problem, because if each state individually tried to solve this problem, you would have no solution at all. And I think about this Federalist paper a lot when we talk about what should the federal government be doing and what shouldn't it be doing. Because when John Jay made the pitch, he identified very clearly it's about dealing with foreign governments. It's about dealing with foreign powers. It's about the areas where the United States needs to speak with one voice. He didn't bring up anything about domestic policy. It just wasn't the sort of thing that he was concerned about, which I think is an interesting moment today when we have the big reveal that a huge portion of the right-wing spaces on X turn out to be foreign actors seeking to influence our politics, or just grifting. Who knows?
Yeah, and not even, and we'll get a lot more into it later, but not even in a way that's like trying to, I guess, articulate some coherent right-wing worldview, but just purely in a I'm just going to needle and poke and divide and instigate. I'm just like purposely just trying to inflame in order to divide the American people from within. And I think you're exactly right. Federalist 3 is 100% on the money of why we do need to be united, because there are bad actors out there, shock of shocks, but there are other countries that have their own interest at heart, and American prosperity may not be an interest of some of these other places. And so maybe they're going to actually do something about that, or try to do something about that. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing in with this whole big Twitter story. But I know Alex and Tyler, you're our guests here, but either of you got any thoughts on Federalist 3 for us?
Before I take it on my tangent, Alex, you want to go?
Yeah, it's the first time I've heard of it. It's absolutely fascinating to me, because the question of where the states end and the federal government begins is a really, really challenging one, and I think that's actually what really divides a lot of people in our country is what should the federal government do or not.
Yeah. Let me build stepping stones to the argument before we get there. I got to lay it down for any followers that would hear my policy and just go, "That's stupid." So first and foremost, if we're reading Federalist 3, one of the major arguments that's being given for this union of states is efficiency. And efficiency is argued multiple times throughout the document, and as a convincing point to try to get states to join: the efficiency of trade, the efficiency of defending the border, the efficiency. He talks about how it's more efficient in terms of conflicts between states. Less wars will result. We've only had one war result inside the United States since we made this union. The warning here is that could be infantile, I'm losing the words right now. I took a couple puffs. Anywho, going into that point on efficiency, I would argue that if you look at how a business structure is put down, you usually have a boss at the top. You don't want to have a co-op where everybody has a vote, because it makes your business inefficient. Sometimes you have to come and get these groups together and give people deals and alter the deals slightly and alter the bill slightly in order to get it to pass, because you have different coalitions that you need to bring together to get the vote. You usually want one person at the head of business. Now, that being said, that would be the Democratic versus the hierarchy structure. I would argue that because of this efficiency argument, we should repeal the 17th Amendment and make it so senators are appointed. This would make them more efficient at their job. The 50% of the time they spend out lobbying for votes, trying to get money, etc., would now be spent on their specialization. On top of that, you wouldn't have somebody like Herschel Walker, who's practically brain dead, walk in and only get like 8% away from winning the vote. So I think having that appointee from the state to the federal government would return the Senate back to its more intended purpose and make it more about business and less about politics.
The 17th Amendment is a disaster. It's one of my least favorite amendments. And if for no other reason, like I'm a former teacher, and what the 17th Amendment did is it made generations of people less clear about the importance of the sovereignty of the states. Because when the states were just appointing the senators, it was super clear what the senators were there to do. They were there to represent the interest of their state. And if you wanted to have a say in who your senator was, you had to get interested in local politics. Now, because they're directly elected, it's just one more election that's treated with like a national news media. It's treated like there's going to be CNN stories, and it's a direct election in that sense, and it doesn't require that people are in the weeds on their local government the way that it used to be. And I think that does everybody a disservice. And quite frankly, our system works best when we have a robust role for the states. And taking that away from the states was probably an error. So if there was an amendment that I could undo, 17's high on my list. I'm with you, Tyler. That's not my favorite.
And Tyler, you got some support in the chat. Look at that.
I'm supporting myself.
Oh, okay. I wasn't gonna say that part, but you know,
what I'm curious about is that would be considered a very dramatic change, right? Like that would be a very, very stark, dramatic change. And I'm wondering if there are any analogs in American history where we changed something that dramatically.
Enacting the 17th.
You could say that. You could also do...
right. Like, I mean, like I'm being a little tongue in cheek, but like going.
No, I hear you.
It's clearly at least symmetrical in terms of how dramatic it.
Well,
it
what would be different back then is that there wasn't a bunch of people who were used to voting for their senators, right? Like we have an entire population. For instance, this is the first time I've actually heard about the idea of going away from that. I was born in the 80s, and it's always been like that for me. So I do worry about people feeling disenfranchised. It seems like a hard sell to a population who's used to it. Just thoughts coming out of my head.
Just to allay your concerns. In any scenario where we amended the Constitution, you would have to have ratification. It's 2/3 or 3/4 of the states?
I think it's 3/4.
Yeah, so you would have to be passed, supermajority in the House and Senate, and the states would have to back it. And Justice Scalia once had his clerks do the math about how hard it is to pass an amendment these days, and the math he came up with was that if you controlled 2% of America's voting population, but you could put them wherever you wanted. You could just move them around the states. With 2%, you could block any constitutional amendment, because that's how crazy the margins are. It has to be just something that everybody wants. So Alex, I wouldn't worry about it. Like in any scenario where it actually happens, it's because the people overwhelmingly favor it. That's just the nature of the beast.
And in the law, and we'll try and keep our lawyer hats somewhat off, but there is this idea of reliance interests where this is why stare decisis, upholding precedent is a pretty strong doctrine, because as stuff is in place, especially as it's in place over time, over decades and generations, people do develop a pretty strong reliance interest in things just being stable and staying the same of the way they are. And this is an example of that, where even though we would say in our perfect world, we would say this amendment would never have been passed in the first place. Now here we are, 100 years later, more than 100 years later, and it's one of those like, gosh, well, there's really no appetite for it. It's kind of one of the more, I guess it's one of those things you can put. It's like a party trick almost, of like, oh, here my awesome argument for why the 17th Amendment is just totally sucks. Which I think everyone here, we all agree, it's actually a good argument. It's just a matter of
hear me out. Living, breathing document type people, judges could get put in and overread Marbury versus Madison to give SCOTUS the power to declare amendments unconstitutional.
Fuck right off. Oh my God, Tyler. Fuck right off. Okay. I think what just happened is that Tyler has been trying to find something for me and him to debate. And he's like, what is the thing I could grow in a lab to make Ryan as angry as possible? He's like, what would just make him blow a fucking gasket? He's like, I know, we should have judges overturn constitutional amendments. That seems like the kind of thing we should do. Holy shit, Tyler.
Hey, who said all the rage baiters were Bangladeshi?
I'm tempted, but I'm gonna,
Yeah. Who said all the rage baiters were from Bangladesh and Pakistan? Looks like they're right here in Georgia. My
homegrown.
Oh, that's right. But yeah, well, hey,
it is a funny critique of living constitutionalism, because under living constitutionalism, why not? Shit, if you can rewrite the Constitution, surely you can overturn an amendment. Fuck it.
Yeah. Well, Chapingro is staying on watch. Be careful. Ketanji Brown Jackson, she may be watching. But yeah, well, hey, I guess since we're already talking about it, I'd say let's go ahead and jump into this X story because it's quite fascinating, and I think a lot of people are getting it wrong, actually, especially our friends on the left who are seeing this as like a celebration moment of like, aha, look, MAGA is like a totally, completely astroturfed foreign bot farm, foreign actor movement, which is like certainly yes, you can see that from all these Twitter accounts that their locations being revealed as being foreign. But I think there's a layer deeper on that. But before we get to lay the groundwork, I guess for anyone who hasn't heard already, and actually I don't even know all the details. I'll need some of you guys to fill me in. I guess X has a feature. Did they take it down? Is that what happened? Is it not? It's not live right now. The location feature.
It's live. It just had an inconsistent rollout. So it was
Okay.
working and then it stopped working for me and then it started working again. And it doesn't work on all devices necessarily. So if you
Okay.
don't have the feature yet, you'll probably have it soon. It's also not super intuitive. Like you have to click on the profile and then click on where it says when they joined. And then it
Okay.
will suddenly give you all this information about them that you didn't used to be able to have. But that's if you don't know to do it, you wouldn't do it.
Right.
But
Right.
fascinatingly, and we'll see if this is something that people can fix, it tells you how they joined and where they joined. And what's really fascinating about that is that even if they start using an ISP, or sorry, VPN, I'm not sure that's going to change it going forward because it has a historical understanding of where you're based. Now, we don't know this. This will be tested. But the idea that you can tell now who's, kind of fucking around and LARPing as an American is
Yeah.
wild. I put up a post recently where there's an account called America First, right? Like America First, and they post a lot of stuff on it's like crying white women, and they'll be like, with a cross, and they'll be like, I love Jesus. This is what America's about. A lot of posts like that, right? Or they'll say like America's not for foreigners, and they'll like, kind of lean into the I don't want to say Groiper, but Groiper light type
Yeah.
narrative about like what America is. And then today it's revealed that accounts from Bangladesh. Like this is not a Jesus loving white woman who votes in American elections. This is a dude from Bangladesh who, in the most charitable light, is grifting you for money on X. And in the least charitable light is a foreign agitator attempting to influence our politics. So I think this is a great reveal. Like I think this is one of my favorite features that's been rolled out in X in a long time.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, when I see some bullshit, propaganda coming up there, I at least have something I can do to check where this propaganda came from.
Yeah, I gotta play something real quick. We got a recommendation from our boy Zero Fucks here. This is the one he's been rolling out big time on Twitter. Sorry, Tyler, you're covered right now by the chat, but you're gonna have to deal with it. Which is like, it's funny. Sorry, I took it off right at the end, but it's like, yeah, that's kind of what we just learned is that a lot of these profiles by having this feature rolled out, which yeah, by the way, I think we're all in agreement here. I love the feature. I think this is a great transparency, like show us who these people really are. Well, not who they really are, but like at least where they're from, what country they're from to so we can actually understand who are the people that are really the ones trying to shape our politics so we can appropriately ignore them. And yeah, so I think yeah, absolutely great feature. I'm glad it's rolled out kind of fully. I understand there's probably going to be some stuff to work out. And I don't know what exactly the solutions are going to be because I've seen some people throwing out like we need to verify the identity of every person on Twitter, and it's like, well, I don't know the actual how you do that. I got some questions over that of how you're going to actually authenticate these are real people, but it's yeah, I don't know that there is quite necessarily a good answer to that, but yeah, no, fascinating story.
If they did that, I'd actually be happy, because then X would lose its stranglehold on how many people on Earth that have to use it. It's what would happen to X if you had to require your actual identity, is it would die, and then its user base would be distributed to the other platforms, which would be, I think, a good thing. I think it's a little bit too centralized, but that's my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, it's man. And so yeah, this is kind of the point I wanted to bring up, because I've seen a lot of folks on the left like really hooting and hollering that this is just like such an own, and like, look, everyone on the right, like, y'all are just a bunch of clowns and frauds, and the whole right wing is just a bunch of foreign actors and a bunch of larpers and whatnot. But it's like, to me, it goes a level deeper than that. And because it's, to me, it's who's really the ones getting played here. Certainly, I'm not going to dispute. There's a lot of people that are on the right that will follow these accounts and retweet them uncritically, because they don't know where they're from, and they just like what it says, because it is some like blood sports, red meat, politics type content. But a lot of these big accounts on the left, well, first off, there are a number of accounts on the left that are also the same idea from foreign countries, just posting this kind of red meat, rage bait type content. But it's like, I look at a lot of these big accounts that are real people on the left, and like their whole brand on Twitter and on YouTube is like responding to these accounts and dunking on them as like, ha, look how dumb they are, and these idiots. It's like, so who in that world, who's really the ones that got played? Like, is it us for kind of already recognizing these are not very smart, even if they were American, these are not very smart opinions that are being put out there? Or is it the people that are like looking at and thinking, oh, look how dumb the right is. Like, these are their champions, and I'm just gonna dunk on them. Versus like, are y'all actually gonna debate someone on the right that does know what they're talking about and can put together a worldview to go against? Because a lot of that seems to not be happening. They'd rather sit in their comfort zone and just like pick on the low hanging fruit that these Bangladesh accounts are putting out there for them.
Yeah, all this really proved to me is that people from India and Bangladesh and maybe Western Africa are just better at engagement farming than people from the United States, because it's just the daily rage cycle. There's nothing unique about these accounts. You can find 1,000 others saying the exact same thing. These people are just probably more dedicated, or know how to work an algorithm a little bit better, or know if we do this certain thing, people will click on it better than just the average Joe trying to grow his account by himself. There's probably a firm behind it that looks into research and such. So I would argue that all we're seeing from this is engagement farming happens, and some people are better at it, and it just so happens to be firms in this area of the world. And as you said, like, it just, the other side gets their rage cycle dopamine hit out of it too. They see this, they react to it, they make fun of that stupid account, and it gives them their daily video of Trump bad, I hate him so much. And both everyone that wants their rage cycle filled is happy. It's Jerry Springer politics, which unfortunately is a very large part of Twitter.
But I do think it's actually for the project of this channel, for the idea of building a coalition of the reasonable right, let's say looking at 28 and beyond, it's a really good sign, because for a week every story's been, oh, Nick Fuentes is so important, he's growing in power, look at the people who are coalescing around the dissident right, the Groypers and this whole thing. And it turns out a lot of the people who are amplifying those messages are just not American.
Yeah.
Right. So like, to a in a very real way, this kind of amplified the fact that this is not an organic movement. It's being signal boosted because, Tyler, to your point, it's the best rage farm content, right? But that means that these aren't voters. These aren't real people. So when boots hit the ground and we're doing election work in a few years, I don't think this shows to me, at least, that there's a real chance they don't show up. That this is just an AstroTurf thing, and there's going to be space for us to make our arguments, and we're not going to be dealing with, the Nick Fuentes party the way that some people have been doomsaying.
Yeah, I think that's why my takeaway, I'm very happy with this story, because I think it's really these two takeaways. It's, first off, it's showing that a lot of these, Groyper type, just the whole movement really is kind of being artificially boosted by either just outright bots or by foreign actors that, and this isn't to say you cannot be a foreigner and want to engage in the American political discussion in good faith. Like, obviously, that is possible to happen. You are capable of doing that if you don't live in this country. But the people that are doing this, that's not them. They're not trying to enhance the American discourse. They're intentionally trying to make it worse and divide it and just make it like Tyler just said. It is the rage cycle. They're just trying to throw the red meat out there and just get people angry. And so that's why I'm very happy with the story, because it's showing the Groyper movement is not as popular as the figures within it would like lead us to believe on the one hand. And on the other hand, it also shows that, kind of, I guess, along the same vein, those people don't speak for the right at all. Like, the real right still exists. It has not been taken over by this woke right. That doesn't mean it's not a risk of it. And certainly we have to make sure, that's also one of the goals of this channel, is to try and beat back the woke right in the way that the left has failed to beat back the woke left. Like, I think that's going to be one of our main goals moving forward. To me, I was having some fear of, like, oh gosh, like, these people seem like they're really gaining some steam, gaining some momentum. But now I'm just seeing it's like, oh, okay, it's largely an astroturfed foreign instigation psyop, essentially. And I'm hoping our friends on the left can recognize that there still is the possibility, like, a reasonable person can be on the right. I think they're still struggling with that as just a concept, as you and I talk about, Ryan. They don't have a theory of mind for us, just as the idea that you can be reasonable and have common sense and conclude that Scottish common sense moral realism is pretty based. But
Tyler, well done, well played. No one saw anything.
I'm getting yelled at. Okay, so the only part I kind of wanted to, like, the rage cycle, it feeds people to the degree that they want to be fed. Unfortunately, if there wasn't a demand for it, there wouldn't be the supply. It's going to be there. I'm just, at the end of the day, if you got rid of all the foreign influencers saying this, there would be 1,000 other people doing it. They're already there. Like, you're still going to have to meet these people in battle. It's just, we've learned time and time again, election and election again, that Twitter does not represent reality. If you go on there and you ask a poll about trans women in women's bathrooms, and you go look at a poll of general public, they are night and day. They say pretty much the exact opposite thing. So, like, we've learned this time and time again. This is kind of the sample size of Twitter, social media. It's kind of a lot of people that don't fit the norms. That's how I jokingly say the reason why my channel never took off and I'm still sitting at whatever subscribers, 130 at this point, is because everyone that's interested in my brand of politics just watches the news. So, you know, like, you come here to hear the extremists, to hear the different views. So we're kind of in a little bit of a cesspool to begin with.
Yeah, I think it's that, Tyler. And the other thing is, you know, the great one of my eye-opening moments about how the internet and social media works is there's this clip from Asmongold that, like, just blew my mind, because obviously that dude knows how to farm engagement, right? Like, if anybody knows, it's him. And he kind of had, like, this, like, he dropped character for a minute, and he was just saying, like, look, you guys are making fun of me, but let's be real about what happens. If I look over at my metrics on my second monitor and I see that you guys aren't engaging enough, I mispronounce a word on purpose, because then you all go crazy and start fucking correcting me, right? So, like, there's a deep wisdom there where it's like, if you're someone who's trying to be scrupulously accurate, and as lawyers we often try to do that, you're going to speak with a lot of disclaimers, you're going to have a lot of sources, you're going to be really careful, you're going to present an argument that's rational and that it really works on every level, and that doesn't work at all in these spaces. Like, what you need to do is do some kind of, like, you know, farming technique. But that's how you end up with fucking Destiny cheering the death of you know, that firefighter at the Trump rally who got shot. Because why is he doing it? I mean, I have all kinds of mind reading that I could do about Destiny, but if I was going to make my best guess, he's farming. That's why he's doing it. He knows damn well what he's doing. He's being disgusting because it gives him clicks.
I've asked Andrew Wilson, what do I got to do to get a debate with you that doesn't involve me insulting your family or, like, insulting you as a person? What can I get when just based on the merits? And it's like, there's people that just wait in line. You got to go battle all his orbiters first and work your way up. The way to shoot your way to the top is to go ahead and attack the big guy on a personal level that actually gets their attention. Unfortunately, we reward that negativity because that's what people want to see is the blood.
Yeah.
So I guess what's the what's the solution then, other than I guess it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if you want to play into it, then you're just part of the problem of like, well, now I'm just going to do the blood sports, personal attacks ad hom nonstop, because that'll get me clicks. But then it's like, but now you're feeding into the problem. Or alternatively, you kind of do what we try to do, and I think what Wick tries to do, which is no, we're going to try and be fair. We're not going to resort to the craziness. Some people might come on who could be crazy, but we're really going to try and commit ourselves to trying to be as reasonable as we possibly can. And but then you're right. It just does not drive the clicks as much as you might otherwise like. But
well, there's something just always struck me as sociopathic about having an account and pretending to be someone that you're not for some purpose, and it's always given me the heebie-jeebies. I remember that a couple of years ago there was a leftist account called Erica Marsh. Do you guys remember that at all?
No.
It was a leftist account that got, I think it had like 800,000 followers, and I remember seeing it come through my feed, and it was a rage bait account that was trying to be as stereotypical woke and left as possible, and they got really, really big, and then they got exposed as having an AI picture basically, and then they it was a fake person, basically. It was just a complete fake, and they were saying that they had some like journalist credentials and stuff. Like it was like we all kind of on X kind of thought it was this leftist journalist, and it was creepy when it got revealed that it was not a real, not really that way. And I totally agree with Tyler and you guys that it really is a cautionary tale for us, as a population, that how we are being pitted against each other, and and that reminds me of what you were originally saying, Ryan, about how sometimes foreign actors could pit the states against each other. What was the term that you used, like soft power, or something along that lines? Is that like a more indirect type of attack? A dividing.
Yeah, they can ferment unrest between us by
Mhm.
manipulating our politics, by pitting us against each other.
Yeah, and whether or not that's a foreign actor or if it's just a grifter, it's still causing division and for some purpose, for some purpose, whether to just sow discord because we're an enemy, or to make money and basically play out the mind because it's tearing us apart, And so as far as the solution you asked, Gen Z, how, if it is indeed the population that's being affected so poorly by these grifters and these foreign actors, is there not an argument to say that it is kind of a national security concern, to the point where something like the federal government would be like their problem to think about?
I think that's actually a really good point. I think that there certainly is a national security interest in. Well, obviously there is a national security interest in just the survival and continuing prosperity of the society, of the country. So then the question becomes, okay, what is putting that at risk? What is jeopardizing that? And yeah, I think we're getting to a point. I'm not one of the Civil War doomsdayers, but we're certainly trending in that direction. And if things continue to go in the direction that they have been going in, then it's certainly not out of the question that that's where we might end up. I don't think we're like on the doomsday. What's the how many minutes to midnight? The nuclear doomsday clock. I don't think we're like a 1 minute to midnight, but it's certainly, I think, something to be very aware of and very concerned about. I saw someone float the idea of being able to filter your X feed to accounts based in the United States, or basically being able to filter by location based on where the account comes from. I think that's actually a great point maybe that just is something to do and see how that works out. I'd like to do that. I think that's something that would, at least to know. I think that's the big thing. We just want transparency. We want to know where stuff is coming from. If you want to follow a Qatari journalist who you think has really insightful insight into American politics, by all means, go for it. But don't have it be a Qatari journalist that's fake cosplaying as as an American that is like whatever the ultra dark MAGA 234 on Twitter. That's your this guy just posed great insight. I think that's what I would be looking for, is just transparency above all else.
And resist the temptation to make everything a top-down government issue, right? Like, even setting aside the First Amendment problems, like, there's a problem here. That doesn't mean we need a governmental solution, right? Like, it's very possible that the tech council, Elon, Zuckerberg, all those guys are going to start coming up with solutions like the ones that you guys are positing. And I think we need to let it play out a little bit. And until then, the remedy, as always, is more and better speech. And I think in that regard, all of us who are interested in growing a social media presence, and I think, a lot of us are these days, especially those who are who think they have some content that's worth sharing, they have a message worth sharing. I do think, obviously I have my disagreements with Destiny, but I think this is an area where he is of a good case study, right? Because if you think about like the disgusting shit he said about Trump's assassination attempt, about Charlie Kirk's assassination, which was deeply gross, I wouldn't have said it, right? But why did he say it? It got him to be, I think he was in the top 5 X accounts when he did it. So hugely, influential. It got him a lot of clicks and views. And then in terms of his content and his debates, he had a flow chart of his ideas. And while that meme was gross, it fed directly into the argument. So when somebody says that's really gross, then he says, well, why are you holding me to a higher standard than you're holding Trump? And that sets up his whole argument that he had about what the Republicans were doing. So top to bottom, it was strategically thought out. Like, he had an attention-getting meme. He had a series of arguments that he could go into in greater or lesser depth. And while I wouldn't want to say what he said, there is definitely a lesson there about how to set up your content, create interest in what you have to say, and then set up your arguments so that when you get on the debate stage and someone's challenging you for your hot take on X, it actually puts you into a comfortable place.
So I kind of want to go back to the question you asked a little bit ago, Gen Z, about how do you fix the problem here? I would say that we don't fix the problem. We basically have to realize where we're at. Most people don't engage in this. Only like 5 or 6% of people get on social media to argue, Twitter specifically. And we're in the gauntlet. We're arguing with the people that fell through the cracks of society in a way, or are in a phase of the young person in a phase of their life where they're still discovering themselves, and they maybe like the more caustic things to explain why their life is hard. And like the appeals of populism. Your life is hard and it's not your fault. It's the billionaires, it's the X people taking your jobs or raising your cost of your housing. It's easy, it's convenient, you have to go into depth to figure out why it's wrong. So I think that the reason why we're here isn't to win. The reason why we're here is to not allow Hassan Piker or somebody like that to go unopposed. We're here to win the arguments that were already won in the past for a new generation, to teach them the lessons that we learned growing up, essentially. So we're just kind of, like, you got to, every generation has to be reminded why fascism was bad, apparently. Seems like a no-brainer to me, but I guess here we are. So it's kind of like we're dealing with those people in real time, whereas in the past, before these, they would just kind of find their own little groove, find their own little bar, and maybe commit a hate crime or two, and until they killed somebody or ended up in a prison gang selling meth. Like, we're seeing those people at a younger point, being able to catch them. I think the long-term effect of this is they get to air these things out, the sunlight being the best disinfectant. So also to that, I also think there needs to be the shaming consequence when somebody goes a bridge too far. When Destiny advocates for the death of his political opposition, I think you need to stop having him on. And like you brought up Wick, I'm not trying to single him out here, but like the dude just, CP on his personal computer and lying about what his lawyer said to keep it. Advocating for the death of political rivals. There's no line, it seems like, the dude can't cross where he's like, that's too far for me, where we're kind of doing what we call as the no retard policy. Once somebody displays that they can't understand another interpretation besides their own interpretation, and any other interpretation is stupid and bad faith, that person is weaponizing stupidity. When somebody needs basic things explained to them, but in their arguments they can use a complex version of the exact same argument, like Trump is a rapist because of sexual abuse, civil case, but they can't figure out that same line of logic for anything else. That person is intentionally derailing the conversation. We just kind of shut them out, and we've had much more productive conversations since. I would say that's the solution in my mind, is just once you realize that person's like that, just kind of, thanks. And maybe they'll be like, oh shit, people don't want to hang out with me anymore. I got to stop.
It's so funny, Tyler. That's literally the thing that made my usage of X something I could keep doing. Because for a long time, I was getting into like a lot of arguments, especially like I often philosophy bro on X. So I was doing like, 100 reply arguments about some thread about, whether God exists, or a particular argument for the existence of God, or getting into like some theological space and talk about natural law. And at a certain point, you realize you're like, holy shit, like, unless somebody within 2 replies can show me that they are worth talking to, I'm going to drop a meme and bounce. Like I just do not have time or emotional capacity to like spend a lot of time arguing with somebody who might just be absolutely not worth talking to. Like, you have no reason to think this person is sane or wise. Like, why bother? Like, give them a response or two. But if it doesn't seem like they're interested in having a real conversation, just fuck it, move on.
I realized when I was younger, there's this thing as human beings have where we feel like we need to right the wrongs of the universe that happened in front of us. Like if somebody does something in traffic to cut me off, I'm now angry and I got to cut them off back, or vice versa. And I realized that when I got on X, if I can't, I'm not enough person to fight all the battles. I need to pick my battles well. And in that case, I'm going to pick the ones that I enjoy with competent, fun opponents. I'm not going to deal with this person insulting me, never addressing my arguments, lying about what I just said to him, the previous comment, all that. It's not worth the time. We only live once, and you only get so much time to argue with people. You might as well fucking enjoy it.
Yeah, and I'm sure you guys are aware of this already, but kind of the whole point of debate is really 2 potential outcomes you could be shooting for. First is you can be trying to persuade your debate opponent to actually try and get them to change their mind. Oftentimes, that's really not possible. If people are willing to engage and fight with you, it's because they think they're right, and nothing you say is going to change that. So that's really doesn't happen very often, and it certainly never happens in a single back and forth. If you're going to change someone's mind, it's got to be over time. But the second outcome you can look for in a debate is to change the audience's mind. And to y'all's point, it's like, yeah, you can get into 100 reply Twitter thread where it's like you're just destroying them with facts and logic nonstop. And yeah, like Tyler said, they're not even engaging, and you could just tell this person's not in your league. But yeah, what's the audience? Like you're obviously not going to change their mind, and there is no audience whose mind you could potentially change. So it truly is a complete waste of time, unless maybe you're trying to sharpen your own. Like, I want to make sure I have a solid logic tree I can kind of march down. But aside from that, then it's like, yeah, they're truly there is no benefit in it. So yeah. So I'm curious then, kind of talking about this. I know populism was brought up, and I agree that I think the solution is you have to appeal to people and just persuade them with good arguments. That's what I've always believed in. What I worry about is it feels like the argument. It's easy to make an argument for populism, to point to, well, the billionaires, they're just messing everything up, and they're the reason your life sucks, and that's why we have to tax them, or tax them 1%, make them pay their fair share. And there's a whole million arguments you can make that are quote unquote populist arguments. That's, I think, our challenge, is to try and be like, yeah, that certainly might sound cool, but let's actually break it down with you. My question for y'all is like, how are we feeling about this this potentially burgeoning woke left and right alliance that does seem to be the broad underpinning of it does seem to be this populist idea that, like, we're just the people the people have to stand together against the powerful and the elite that are just oppressing us left and right. And that seems to be the pitch. And if you've got folks that are openly extending the olive branch, I know we've seen Fuentes be doing it. Sargon of Akkad had just openly said the issue with the woke left is the left's part, not the woke part. So is this something that really is a real alliance that's coming out, or is this, what do we think?
Sargon got big mad at me, by the way, when I I call that mask all the way off, and he got upset about it. I think I honestly, this is why I've been trying to develop these arguments that ground American morality in the Declaration of Independence, because it's a non-negotiable, right? Like I feel like you can't really say the Declaration of Independence doesn't count. So then if you can say, well, what's the problem with these positions when you see the woke left, the woke right? And I know some people don't like using the term, but like the way I use it, just to be clear, because I do use it a lot, to me, you are woke if you are invoking collectivism to attack the American moral proposition, right? So if a leftist says, because of systemic racism, we need to get rid of individual rights and impose equity, that's woke. If a right-leaning person says, because white Christian men are being treated unfairly, we need to amend the Constitution so that only white Christian men can vote, that's woke. It's just woke from a different direction. I know some people don't like the term, but I think I use it fairly in the way that I use it. And the solution is to find common ground that makes people look dumb for attacking, right? Like, it makes them look foolish. And I'm hoping that the Declaration of Independence is that, where I say, like, this is who America is. If you're saying that you have some better idea, well, what makes you so special? What makes you so wonderful that you get to undo our American moral proposition, that you get to make up something better? Because that's always what it is, right? It's always these people showing up and saying, I would like to remake the country in the image of my own ideology, and then we'll get utopia. And we all just have to tell them no. We have to tell them no. And in order to tell them no, you have to have a moral foundation to stand on. And if you don't, you have nothing to say.
Yeah, I reject identity politics, and group-based politics. I could say I was a Bernie person back in the late 2000 teens, and I totally hear what you're saying about how the collectivism comes in and supersedes that individualism that is at the core of our society. That really resonates with me, because it to me what it means to have this American experiment is to actually care about what it's like to be a citizen, like a hypothetical citizen in that environment, and what kind of opportunities does that hypothetical citizen have, and to basically kind of think of society through that individualistic lens. That to me, that's what it's built on, right? Am I off base?
No, I think that's I think you're completely on base, and it stinks that we got to make the clarification every time, but I agree it's necessary, Ryan, that like some people really take issue with us using this term woke right, but it's like, I think the way you explained it is like, I don't know how you can really argue against that, because there is absolutely a strain of thought on the right, a faction on the right now, that is this, and they're pretty overt with it, in that it is the white Christian male is oppressed in all these different ways, and therefore we need overt discrimination in favor of white Christian men, and the white Christian nationalist state in America, that's what it was built to be, and that's what it has to be, and we have to fight for it. And so that is the same exact logic that the woke left relies upon in making their arguments. And so
they even use the same arguments. I have seen multiple times. Look at the percentage of Jewish representation in X, Y, and Z fields and compare it to white representation when we're a white nation. It's like, bro, you're making the exact same argument that blue-haired lady was making back in 2014 about black representation. Like, do you not realize that you're doing the same? But yeah, so kind of going on what you guys are saying here, both sides have a fringe that's desperate for attention. Sometimes they're desperate for outrage. Like you saw Jimmy Dore when he got kicked out of TYT and all that. He was reaching out to right wingers. He went on Tucker's show because they want that horseshoe theory thing to say we're above party. We're actually about X, Y, or Z issue. They're desperate. They're thirsty for attention. The fact of the matter is they got rejected by their first choice, which is the party that aligns with them on most things. So they're just looking for any kind of, they're throwing shit at the wall, looking for anything to stick at that point. We're seeing right now the GOP was rejecting the fringe. So Vance was probably the closest thing to like the Fluentes, isolationist, anti-Israel in that the administration had. And then, you know, Vance started attacking the dude's wife. And we just found out a couple of days ago that JD Vance was saying he's currently lobbying Trump about the dangers of the Groyper movement and how they shouldn't be involved in Republican politics moving forward. And Vance was their in guy like a year ago. So it's like they've completely blown it with the one politician they had by just holding him to this impossibly high standard the same way the DSA does. The DSA is already going after Mondomny for meeting Trump. That's just meeting him, regardless of the context, just working with the fascist. That's enough. They're already going after him. So if you look at the polling, 95% of the Republican Party is on board with Trump. 85% approves of him on Israel, which is one of the major issues of the Groypers. They are not winning this argument at all. They are completely rejected by the mainstream. They're trying to siphon off the thunder of the MAGA movement from Trump, and it did not work at all. So they're looking out.
Yeah, and I think this really is a regression. Right, when you think about it, like at least the way I view American society, you know, all societies are built on the foundation of nationalism, patriotism, tribalism, right? That's what a nation is. You have to have a unifying whole. That if you don't have that, you don't have a nation. And then on top of that, America added this moral obligation that's based around individual rights. And as long as you're honoring that, you can do all kinds of stuff to make society better. Like you want to elect Christian politicians because you think Christian morality is better. There's no reason you can't do that. Go for it. You know, you want to elect Jewish politicians, go for it. Like this is all fair game. What's not fair game, and I think why, you know, it resonated with me when Alex said he just categorically rejects identity politics. What's not fair game is invoking collectivism and saying, because of X, Y, and Z thing happening to my identity group, we undo the steps we've taken. We undo the commitment to individual rights. We undo our commitment to treating each other like individuals. We undo the American moral proposition, because that's always essentially neo-Marxist logic, right? Like, because what is the neo-Marxist logic? It's the Marxism was the class struggle leading to the revolution. Neo-Marxism is that you replace class with an identity group, and the identity group grievance leads to the revolution. And that's why you have to overturn everything instead of building on it, right? And that's always the distinction, right? Does your political beef require that we tear the entire American philosophical structure down, or can you slot it on top? Can you build something? Can you make an argument for how we can make society better without violating our principles? And that's what we should be doing. But unfortunately, you know, we have barbarians at the gate, so we're spending some time defending it.
Well, I think I'm the only person here that's going to stand up for identity politics. I think it definitely has its place, and it's done a lot of good. Civil rights, women's suffrage, and a lot of good things came out with it in the past. It's less the tactic and more the people using it. I also see equity as like, we're going to go into this when we cover my response to the debate and the way I wish they would have handled it. I see equity as an enhancement onto equality, and it's a hyper focus on demographics in the exact same way those demographics were discriminated against because of their skin color. The only way to reverse it is to try to target that demographic back in the same way. But even then, if you work equity into it, I could show you guys examples of equity-based policy that you might say, well, you know, that's actually like the Pell Grant. Why would you give rich people free money to go to a college if they can afford it? Why not just limit that to certain people below certain amounts of income? And that technically is qualified of what equity is in policy. Now you just kind of do it for different demographics based on their skin color. That's all.
Well, no, my issue with equity has never been equity per se. Like, if equity was what it says on the tin, I have no issue with it. Like, because in theory, you could say, look, We have this wonderful society. We're the richest, most prosperous nation. We've built this great thing. Can't we do more? Can't we do more to help people who are struggling? And the answer is yes. My problem with equity is not that you're trying to help people. My problem with equity is that it's violating our obligation to treat people as individuals, right? So if what you're saying is we're going to give money to people who need it because they need it, you are evaluating whether they need it as individuals and helping them. I have no issue with that. My issue comes when you say we want to help people who are needy and we are going to use race as a proxy for need.
Yeah, it was
right?
done
Because now you're giving a
yeah.
benefit to the group instead of to the individual.
It was done in ham-fisted and very unimpressive ways, like quotas and things like that. Like the thing is, like, if your father's a pilot, the likelihood you become a pilot's higher. So the way to solve that in some people's mind is to make quotas and give exemptions and lower the standards for other demographics so they become pilots, and in a couple generations it'll balance out. And that has not been working. Plus, people don't want to fly with a less safe pilot. Completely understandable. The way to do it would be to do it on the mentorship level, to try to get like pilot mentor, apprentice pilot that could be somebody that would be trained in this way so they could pass that on to their family. It was done ham-fisted and poorly, but the desire behind the movement's good, and it's based off of good data. I would argue it was just uncreative policy. We've done it in good ways in the past.
Well, this is the hilarious thing. Like, of course, I'm going to agree with that because, you know, before law school, I spent nearly a decade. I was in Teach for America, and I was dedicating my life to teaching underprivileged Black kids to read because I wanted to do something to improve society. And I saw an education gap in a community I knew, which was, you know, East New York in Brooklyn, and I wanted to do something about it. Like my issue has never been with the idea of helping. My issue is completely with the fact that it violates what I believe to be moral, non-optional moral propositions. Like you just are not permitted to do it in the way that they're doing it. And the what I bring up the fact that I was, you know, a teacher for so long because it's hilarious, because like the same people who will get on my YouTube comments and be like, you know, Ryan's the kind of guy who would fucking undo the Civil Rights Act if he could, like, say whatever like shit about me that they want to say because they're memeing on the internet. It's like, what the fuck have they ever done? What the fuck have they ever done to make life better for any group that they claim to care about in society? I taught hundreds of economically disadvantaged Black children to read for a decade. What the fuck did you do? Right? So, and the answer is typically nothing. Because it's just like, it's a virtue signal parade. But ultimately, that's it, right? Like Tyler, if you can find a way to make society better without violating our obligation to treat each other as individuals, I'm all for it. I have no issue with that.
And you want to focus that on different specific skin color groups? You wouldn't see that as a problem?
I think it's a problem when it's a problem when you give a benefit on the basis of race.
That's where the major disagreement lies.
Yeah, and you see this, by the way, like in I talk about this all the time, but in like Harvard affirmative action context, they were using race as a proxy. But the last time they published data, and they don't publish data anymore because it was so fucking embarrassing, the Black students that they were admitting were the most high achieving Black students, which meant that by and large they were not the descendants of slaves. They were first generation immigrants typically, or, you know, foreign students. So, you know, they were giving a boost to Black students for social justice purposes, but they weren't even giving it to the people who were harmed by the legacy of American racism. They were giving it to a completely different group of people just because they happen to look like the people who were harmed by American racism, which is incredibly fucked up.
What you're dealing with right there is called the church of politics, and you probably notice it from leftists a lot, where they don't actually do anything. What they do is they stand on the shoulders of their movement. I advocate to give poor people free things. So because I advocate for that, that's actually better than you going out and actually doing something, because you only affected a handful of people, and I'm advocating for nationwide change. So my church of government is better than your actual practical action. And it's so fucking pompous and stupid. Only kids believe it.
Kids and 30-something-year-old Turkish Hollywood live streamers in their $3 million mansions who, oh, socialism, you say socialism is when me poor? Oh, I don't think so. Because, yeah, it's I'm advocating for, well, no, you got to do the voice. Oh, I'm advocating for national change. I don't have to give my money away. But yeah, I think, and to go to this point though, it was an interesting debate y'all just had there. The extra layer I would add to it is when we take strong objection to the way equity is currently rolled out, specifically on the basis of race, is usually how it is done. And you brought up Pell Grants, which is more of a class-based distinction. One of the major legal distinctions we're dealing with there does have to do with whether something is a protected class, and so race is the highest of the protected classes. Meaning, if you're going to do any sort of discrimination based on race, it's got to survive the strict scrutiny standard, which is the highest level of all legal review. Versus class-based distinctions is not a protected class, and therefore any type of government policy that's going to treat people differently on the basis of their class, that's just going to survive rational basis review, which is the lowest and is almost impossible to not survive. So that's just kind of some of the legal procedure on how something like a Pell Grant program comes into effect, and actually is broadly supported, because, like, to Ryan's point, when you're identifying people who you do have people who are in need based on an individual basis, where it is someone who truly does not have financial means, or at least the same financial means, and it's as a basis not of a skin color, not of their gender, not on the basis of any sort of protected category, but simply on the basis of their class, their life circumstances. I think that's a lot easier sell if you are going to do some sort of equitable relief, which is also something recognized within the law. The whole idea of an equitable remedy that's well recognized for centuries, that sometimes traditional remedies under the law are not appropriate to truly fix the situation at hand and make someone whole again. And in those situations, now there are a handful of equitable remedies that are available. So,
And look, man, I actually think the Supreme Court got this right. I don't know if it's going to be enacted properly by colleges. I have suspicions, but when they decided the affirmative action case, I think they got it dead right. Like, if you were discriminated against, if people were racist to you, if that impacted your life, if that's part of your story, that absolutely should be taken into account when you're applying into college, right? Not because we're going to give you a bump because you checked a box about what your race is, but because you've explained to us how this is relevant to your story. You've explained to us as an individual what makes this compelling. Like, I think that's absolutely fine and should, in fact, be taken into account, because that's part of your story as an individual. What we shouldn't do is this insane exercise where we check boxes and pretend that we're doing something noble. Like, there's like all the Middle Eastern kids had to check white because there was no box for them. Like, I mean, it's just absolute fucking nonsense, and it's creating, I like Tyler's phrase, like the church of politics, where you're basically saying, like, we just feel good because we're treating groups of people like sacred cows, and that makes us feel good about ourselves. But in reality, you're just degrading everybody who's involved. And Clarence Thomas talks about this all the time, like how upset he is with this, because he knows that affirmative action played a role in his admission into school, and the psychic injury that it caused him, where he's saying, like, I've always had to wonder whether or not I deserved what I was given, because I know that I didn't earn it in the way that I wanted to. And I think that's an interesting point. Like, it has all kinds of terrible trickle-down effects, but you don't even need to get that far. Treat people like individuals, and these are all solvable problems.
The basis for the argument that I think kind of holds me steady through here is the precedent. I want to say that it was in the redistricting. Didn't the Supreme Court say that this is technically unconstitutional, but we need to allow it for 25 more years?
Yeah, that was Grutter, the first affirmative action case. They said, like, this is nakedly unconstitutional, but we have to live with it.
That is kind of what I'm sort of arguing, is that because of the way that this discrimination took place, and I'm all fine with your individual as examples with private institutions. That's absolutely fine. I'm talking about what the government should be responsible for. And the government was allowing for a systemic, institutionalized discrimination against a group. So I feel like that the way to fix it should also be that as well. It just shouldn't take away from anybody else. You shouldn't be able to discriminate against other groups or do that, but preferential treatment for that group in certain ways. And again, it's been done in very ham-fisted ways, like quotas have shown not to work, putting kids in colleges that they weren't ready for tends to see higher flunk rates. Like some of the ways it's been done haven't worked, but the sentiment behind it I still agree with, and I still think it's something we should keep pushing forward for.
Well, I want to ask Alex what he thought about this topic when it came up in the debate and how he viewed. I know, Alex, you watched it, but I have to give an anecdote because Tyler, it's just so perfect. I think that there's the reason that it's so important to contextualize these experiences in the framework of the individual is because it lets you evaluate the seriousness of the issue. Like, I don't know if you guys have read Ibram X. Kendi's books, but like in one of his books, he starts talking about why did he become the anti-racist guru? What was his origin story, his experience of racism? And I swear to God, the story was he was in class and he didn't think he was being called on because they were calling on white kids instead. That's it. That's what set him down the path of authoring How to Be an Anti-Racist and stuff like that. And, you know, as stories of racism go, that's pretty fucking tame. It's a pretty mild story. And I think that's fair. Like you can hear someone's story and put it in context and then weight it. Whereas, you know, like you're going to talk to some other people, they're going to be like, you know, my parents lost everything. They couldn't get a job because of racism. We grew up poor. We couldn't get out of this neighborhood. And it's like, oh, holy shit. Like you've triumphed over this incredibly difficult circumstance. That's a very, very different thing that I can evaluate on an individual level. But Alex, you've been quiet for a while, and I'm so curious because, so I know I'm segueing, but just to do it.
Oh no, yeah, good segue.
Alex and I, you know, because we bonded over deism, and you know, natural law is like the moral heartbeat of deism. It is the thing that we talk about because we don't have scripture. So natural law is the moral framework, right? And it's a tricky thing to explain to a new audience who is not familiar with it, especially in a hostile setting where people are coming after you. So I'm curious, Alex, having seen the debate, like, how do you think that came across where we were trying to articulate these principles, and, you know, how do you think it went?
I think it was a really good example of the two sides, essentially. Pisco definitely articulated his side, and I think it was a great debate. And I don't know if you noticed, there was a lot of comments that were positive, you know, in the YouTube and social media posts and stuff. And when I was watching it, it was compelled. It was riveting to hear you guys go back and forth. And like what I thought about it was that Pisco seems to have a point in that it does seem, the idea of natural law theory does seem to be kind of like a niche philosophical topic that is almost it actually is esoteric, you know, when you think about it. It's kind of hidden knowledge that you have to like crack open to after like a bunch of different thoughts and research, and you kind of arrive at this really deep truth about natural law. And so I think that's a fair critique. But what we're talking about is, it goes down to our human core, basically. Like it emerges from our humanity, essentially. And both of us actually are teachers. I used to teach kids as well, Ryan. I don't think I've ever told you that, but I'm familiar with child development and that kind of stuff as well. And what really popped in my mind is that Pisco is not correct in that you have to have this philosophical understanding of natural law theory in order to understand it. I actually don't think that is that's actually required, because I think that, like, at a very early age, we're basically little natural philosophers. I mean, if you have kids, and if you've been around kids, they will very quickly start asking why. They'll start, and then when you give them the answer, then you got 5 more whys, you know. And that seems to be our natural disposition the moment we start having any kind of intellectual development in our brain. And so that's what I think is the takeaway from that debate, was that I think we really need to get into the the way to describe natural law from apart from the philosophical rhetoric, which is really fun and awesome. I love digging deep into that stuff. But for the layperson's perspective, I feel like we can tap into that aspect of their humanity, and that experience of what it's like to be a human, basically, and what, because as I feel like when you go into all of history, because that's what I've been doing is trying to read, because when after I watched your guys' debate, I immediately started doing some research on how you would argue for natural law without using philosophy. What do you have to say about that, Ryan? I've been talking for a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? There's I'm of two minds on it. Like, one, from a purely tactical standpoint during the debate, and we talked about this already, so I don't want to gild the lily here, but in terms of debate tactics, it was very difficult to make like an empirical case. Like, there's not going to be like a study or a Pew Research thing that says, do you believe in natural law, that I could refer to. So it seemed like the best argument that the left has abandoned the moral proposition was to goad Pisco, because I love Pisco, he's a friend, but he's very aggressive. So he's going to go berserk, and he's going to start talking about how stupid it is. And that's the best possible evidence that the left has abandoned this philosophy, because they think it's incomprehensible garbage, right? So in many senses, just getting him to be that aggressive was a goal, was, I thought, the useful way going forward. In terms of like the philosophy itself, yeah, I don't think you need to go super deep with it, but it's very hard to not teach the philosophy if you're talking to somebody who's not religious, is what I find. If I'm talking to somebody who's religious and I'm like, hey, what do you think about the idea that there's just like natural law and there's just a way that people are and we ought to respect that? That 99 times out of 100, they're like, yeah, obviously. That's obviously true. Of course it's true. It's kind of baked into the cake, right? Where it becomes tricky is when you're dealing with people who have really drunk deep from postmodernism, the way Pisco has, where, like, you know, Pisco doesn't believe words have any correct definition, right? He doesn't and I'm not saying about like, okay, we could come up with a different symbol. We don't have to say, you know, what's the famous example? Water. We could say agua, right? But like,
no,
I'm
pi. What is pi?
Pi. I'm saying that like they're pointing at a truth, and the truth doesn't change whatever your symbol does, right? And like that is not something that he's familiar with, or has he views it as kind of like an outdated position, and that's really hard to attack without getting philosophical. But it's weird because undergrads are taught that now. So they leave university believing this, and they think it's like the baseline understanding of the world. Like it just is, it is the way they think, but it's not something that anybody thought until very recently. Like, this is a total new development. And I have not found a good way to unprogram that. So in those instances, I end up doing what Gen Z was talking about earlier, where I'm playing to the audience, because I don't know how to deprogram somebody from a postmodern worldview. The problem with postmodernism is that it's infinitely self-reinforcing, right? Mm-hmm. Because if I say like, oh, well, there's this objective truth, and they're like, well, you only subjectively think that, right? Like you can never get out of it once you're like in the wormhole.
One of the thoughts I had when I actually wrote this down when I was watching the video, when I hear, because Pisco, he articulates it exactly the way that it goes in all of the debates. I've seen that position so many times, and he did a good job representing it. And the idea that I get, or the feeling that I get when I hear him talk about why it is that we should, why it is that we like should help people, or basically the foundation of everything. There doesn't seem to be a foundation. Basically, it seems to be an orphaned idea. Is basically what I wrote down. Is it seems to be an idea that when you dig down, there seems to be something else that needs to be there. And when you ask about it, when you ask about how this seems to be just this floating idea that we should care about each other and that we have obligations for each other. But then when someone asks, well, do we actually have obligations towards each other? Then they go, well, and then that's when it starts getting like they're talking about an idea that is orphaned. It's been separated from its original formation. It needs to have that natural law grounding for it to make sense, for us to say, oh, we do have obligations towards each other. And the reason for that is natural law. And so if you just kind of lob off natural law and you just end up with the obligation, that seems to be what they do. And then they just kind of run with it, and they don't really realize that you can't run with it by itself, that it can't actually be divorced from that foundational concept. And I think that's the divide between us and people like Pisco, is that they just think they can. They think they can take this idea and say, well, we made it up, and then we're going to run with it, and let's go with it. And it's okay to just put away the original foundation. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. And if you ever spend a lot of time arguing with a postmodernist, one of the things I always say is when you're arguing with a postmodernist, ultimately the argument is about politics, no matter what you're talking about. You could be science, philosophy, religion, whatever it is, you're actually talking about politics. And the reason is exactly what you just said, Alex, and it was well put. If it's all preferences all the way down, right, then ultimately the only question that matters is who gets to enforce their preferences. It's power. And the answer is politics. So in a postmodern worldview, there is no principled position. Ultimately, there is only power and politics. And because of that, anything you're talking about is a political conversation. And if you ever wonder why, you're like, oh my God, I kind of just want to hash out this philosophical point. I kind of want to talk about this scientific point. Like, why does this keep becoming a political conversation? That's why. Because they're not talking to you about science or philosophy because of science or philosophy. It's just a vehicle to the political ultimately. And I don't see a way around that. I mean, there's the rare exceptions, but most of the time when you find the rare exceptions, they're not really postmodernists, and they have some kind of vestige of a different philosophical system that grounds their worldview, even if it's not. And that doesn't have to be religious. That could be, like I always talk about Secular Outpost, who I wish was still on X, who was an atheist philosopher who grounded his worldview in the Platonic forms. I thought it was phenomenal to talk to him because he had just a very different perspective and could actually back up what he was saying. But most people haven't gone down those roads and done that work. I know, Tyler, you're skeptical of some of these ideas. So are we convincing you? Are we bringing you on the team?
I mean, I'm listening. I'm hearing you out. I'm still a little, as I was saying, I'm still not an expert in this particular area. I'm kind of learning myself. But I did want to jump in on the debate. You guys have heard it, but I want it out there on the record. Okay. Hashtag let Don Fon talk.
Don Fon knew his shit. He really did.
I was listening to this on my way driving to Columbia for work, and I had to fight the urge to drive off the road several times. Imagine Don Fon. Put yourself in his shoes. He's like, all right, I got this debate coming up. Who's my partner? Oh, fuck yeah, it's Pisco. We're going to give it to these guys. And then, like, the debate ends. He's like, fuck, we just took the fattest L because that guy wouldn't shut the hell up because it's out during a tantrum. Poor non-fun, man. So I think you guys got met with a lot of debate bro tactics. You got hit with the cycle. You called out a lot of them, and it still didn't stop them from happening. And they actually tried to justify at one point, well, he just called us out for all these bad tactics like they're bad tactics, and did them anyways. But I really feel like Don Fon's argument would have been much better. But yeah, Pisco's argument was essentially come at you guys with a bunch of arguments saying the moral principle would allow this bad thing or that bad thing. And if you hadn't been ready with all your facts there, he would have probably won that argument. But you had like Lincoln quotes, you had Jefferson quotes, you were ready to go, and it shut down his really half-assed internal critique. He just never gave up. 2 hours. 2 hours. He attempted an internal critique that could have took 15 minutes before the debate even started. And then the last hour was the actual prompt itself. It was like pulling out my hair watching it. And if you get into the micro breakdown of it, I think the best dunk came when Gen Z called him out for using two different like schools of logic on a point he made at the beginning versus a point he made at the end. I don't remember exactly what it was about, but the callback to say like, you're basically just throwing shit at the wall is basically what you said to him there in terms of like a debate punch. And it just really landed for me. I enjoyed that. Just, he kind of called out that he had no principle at all. He's just poking holes pointlessly. But yeah, it's I think it's personally harder to take the negative. He was, in my opinion, at the disadvantage. Online, people don't know like official debate tactics and like real debates. So to be the negative in something, you have to like discover the pillars of that argument and look to bust those fundamental pillars out. And I think he did that. He just did it really poorly. And I don't know. I just thought it was a very one-sided, uneventful thing that I enjoyed your recap of his wound licking more than the debate itself.
Well, that was that was definitely planned as far as like I'd heard he had some post debate. We're waiting for Josiah to drop in because that's the typical way things go after Ryan debates somebody, is that Josiah will drop in afterwards to pat him on the back a little bit. That did not happen here. But I think, probably my favorite part from that. Because, that was the feeling the whole debate was like, it was so hard to get anywhere because any sentence that we would say, something about the sentence would just be picked out and be like, well, what does that mean? And it was just like, kind of like Alex brought up, where how kids can have this intuitive sense of just asking, well, why? Well, why? It's like, you can do that. If you're doing a debate, you can just do a never ending, well, why is that? And then to get an answer, well, why does that? And it's like, eventually you'll get
I call that preschool philosophy.
Yeah. Well, and I called him out for this too, and he made fun of me for doing it, but I stand by it. Like, at the time of the founding, there was this philosophical divide where David Hume had injected radical skepticism into epistemology, where he had said that like, we have no reason to believe that we know anything. Like, we observe cause and effect, but we don't know that it's really cause and effect. It's just correlation. How could we ever know that it's really cause and effect? We can't. And he made all these proofs, and he just blew up the idea of logical certainty. And he basically said everything is subject to doubt. And that evolved into postmodernism eventually. But that was he literally blew up what was the foundation of all philosophy prior to that. And Scottish common sense moral realism was a response to Hume, where they said, no, we have no reason to doubt our free will. We should think we have free will. We have no reason to doubt that we're observing the real world. We are observing the real world. We have no reason to doubt that there is moral law and that we can learn the moral law because we intuit it every day. Like Alex was saying, every child knows that there's right and wrong intuitively. It's who we are, and we should just accept these things. These are axioms. We don't have to prove them. We just accept them. It's common fucking sense, right? And that is what America was founded on. And they selected that philosophy rather than Hume's. And the thing about Pisco's thing where he's saying like, well, what does a word even mean? What does it even mean when you say X? What does it mean when you say Y? Is unintentionally, he was absolutely channeling the Hume proposition, right? Nothing means anything. How can you know? You can never prove it up. It all boils down to subjectivity. That's what he was doing. And that's exactly the worldview that our founders rejected, because it's counterproductive. It takes you nowhere. And ultimately, you have to accept these things are true. And everyone does accept that they're true. Everyone certainly lives as if these things were true. No one goes about their life being like, I don't have free will. I can't tell what right and wrong is. It's all just preferences. I don't care that you're stealing from me. That's just my preference. Like, nobody actually lives the way the postmodernist would, suggest is appropriate. So why pretend that it's a real worldview? Why pretend that we have to take this bullshit seriously? And that is, in many senses, the same debate that was happening in philosophical circles at the time of the founding. So it was really interesting to have kind of like a parallel debate all 250 years later.
Yeah. And I think, and Alex, I'm curious if your thoughts on my main takeaway. I think the biggest probably misstep that I had coming away from that was we spent so much time arguing whether or not objective morality is true and real, and whether or not that is like a real philosophy, which obviously we think it is, and so that's why we were defending it, because it's like we believe in it. But if we were sticking straight to the proposition of that debate, it's not whether or not we believe that objective morality and natural law is true and correct. It's about whether the founders believed it and worked it into the founding of the country, the moral framework that they laid out, because that part is just indisputable that it's but even then we're quoting directly to the Declaration, and then Pisco did like quoted to another part of the Declaration to be like, well, is this a moral proposition when it's talking about how King George put this specific tax on this specific people, and it's yeah, so that's what the only thing I wish we could have called that out to be like, whoa, 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 whoa. We're having this whole big debate on whether or not objective morality is true and correct. But that's not what we're here to do. We're here to establish whether or not the founders believed in it, and then whether or not that truly is, what the American moral framework is.
I don't know if it's conscious or unconscious, but I think part of that intent to just take all definitions and turn them into gobbledygook so we can't even have conversations is a way to make it so even if you lose a debate, it's ambiguous and it's based on subjectivity, because I just understand things differently. That's why I lost. And that way, the actual winner of the debate is the one that scores the most attention, the one that gets the best clips, the one that has the coolest dunks that they can turn into something, and essentially at the end of the day translate it to enough, the more votes for their side in the political battle that they're fighting. So I think that it's intentional, and that's why it took 2 hours for you guys just to agree that the founders believed the moral principle, and the moral principle didn't allow slavery. And then hashtag let Nonfon talk. Welcome to chat, Nonfon.
Do you guys want to have Nonfon in to let him talk right now?
I don't know if I am that in favor of the hashtag. He's just going to bring up tariffs and go wild.
Okay. We'll have to work in Nonfon in the future then.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely should have Nonfon on. But Alex, I'm curious because obviously a debate is a challenging circumstance to try to explain natural law because it's not a cooperative conversation. Like, you're fighting over the bloody ground. But I mean, do I remember correctly? I don't want to talk about your personal information. Never mind. I won't say that. But how do you, I know that you've given some thought as to like how to explain these principles, how to teach these principles. So how do you go about doing that? Like if you're trying to teach somebody about natural law, and as you said earlier, like you maybe don't want to go heavy on philosophy, you want to do it a little bit differently. What do you do?
Well, what I first do is I define natural law as an experience, not a belief. Essentially, I think is a pretty good way to put it. And that if natural law is an experience, then the law that is in place currently, no matter what country you're in, that is secondary to the higher law. And the founders clearly believed that, to Gen Z's point, that they didn't believe that they were just setting up a structure and a system of rules. They were setting up a structure and a system of rules, but with it in mind that the people that were going to be in that structure understood the higher law because they were humans, because they had that common thread across all of humanity, basically, that we experience moral obligations and duties, and there's a messiness to it, throughout our development. Like when I brought up kids and stuff, it's not like kids have perfect understanding of right and wrong, but they understand that it exists in a phenomenological way, and that's one of the key words in philosophies that I've been trying to learn a little bit about is phenomenology, which is basically kind of like an epistemology that centers through the first person experience. Have you ever heard of the term knowledge first? Meaning, as you experience, knowledge comes with it. Basically, like it's because I noticed when Gen Z was talking, he was qualifying it as a belief, which is one way to look at it. But but a belief is something that you can debate about, and it's something that you can, figure out whether or not your belief is logical or not. And I think it's missing that that experiential component, that phenomenological component that that ties directly into that experience of what it's like to be a human. And then not everyone has that experience. There are people out there that you ask them, do you experience, natural law? Or you wouldn't use that word, because that's just a word, it's just a sound that comes out of my face. You know what I mean? There's an actual reality to what we're talking about, and that's what we have to appeal to. That's the way that I think about it. And then there's that's how you would, talk to a child or a teenager or someone who doesn't understand natural law. But what's really cool about the theory is, and philosophy in general, is that there's different levels. You can continue to dig deep and get into the amazing thought about all of this kind of stuff. And you can go back to Socrates, and you can go back to Aristotle and the Stoics and Thomas Aquinas, and there's so much you can open up to understand it all. And so when you really put that all forward, it's kind of silly to say, well, that's just preferences, because it was never that.
It's an interesting way of looking at it. Like, my youngest daughter is still in a crib, but she's getting pretty mad about it. Like, she wants us to switch her to a toddler bed, right? So what is she really saying? She's saying she has a liberty interest, and she has an interest in pursuing happiness. And we have a restriction in place that's justified by her security interest. And she's saying that's no longer a fair trade. It used to be acceptable. Now I think that you're curtailing my liberty too much in the name of security, right? And that's life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. It's like, this is not something that is difficult to understand. This is something that a 2-year-old intuitively, she can't make that argument, obviously, but that when she says that she doesn't want this bed anymore, that's exactly what she's saying. She thinks she's old enough to not be locked in to a crib anymore, right? And I think everybody has this experience, right? Like, everybody knows what it is to say, like you were saying about like teenagers, like, I should be given as much liberty as I can handle. And yes, there's a limit to that. Yes, if it turns out that I'm risking my own death, maybe you need to cram down a little bit for security reasons, because my life is still something that needs to be preserved. But this is intuitively what humans are like. I've never met a human who isn't trying to maximize their liberty while still maintaining their security. That's intuitively what we all do.
And I think that's where I was struggling in the debate, because I think that's a good good assessment there, Alex, about I was kind of characterizing it as a belief. But it's like, my feeling was, I feel like we're doing so much here. Well, our Pisco was really doing so much to try and complicate what we were talking about, when really all I'm referring to is this kind of, I guess, phenomenological. It's something you experience. It's something that you feel, like Ryan just laid out. A 2-year-old feels it. They don't know how to explain it, but they just feel it. And like you said earlier too, Alex, like, kids can know right versus wrong, even if they don't know the ins and outs and the nuance. They do have that general sense of it. So it's like, I don't know how better to explain that than it's just kind of I guess it's not very convincing just to say it is what it is, or it just exists, when you've got someone who's saying, no, it doesn't. And it's like, I just say, yeah, it does. So I guess that's kind of what we're talking about here, is like, how do you actually persuade somebody that it does in fact exist, other than pointing to some of these examples, some of these anecdotes? Because, like, how else do you explain a 2-year-old being like having this type of feeling?
Well, but this is why I started leaning into the Scottish common sense moral realism, because it's like, even getting into a position where you're saying, like, let's have a rational argument about why humans value liberty, you're kind of playing into the trap, right? Like, it's such a common sense proposition that humans value liberty, that, like, merely granting that it's worth arguing about is almost too much, right? Like, it has to be the axiomatic. Like, it's foolish to think otherwise. And I don't know if that's a fair or unfair thing to do in a debate. For me, this is why I'm trying to ground it in the Declaration of Independence, because at the very least, I'd like to make the rhetorical flourish of saying, well, I think this is common sense. Our founders thought this was common sense. They wrote it down. If you're rejecting it, the burden's on you, right? Like, I don't need to justify my belief. You need to justify yours because mine lines up perfectly with what our founders wrote down.
Especially too. Sorry, just real quick on that point, because they're the ones that are advocating, saying that what we have is not enough. It's not sufficient. The current moral proposition, and I mean that was Pisco's, his definition of the moral proposition was it's just upholding the Constitution and the rule of law. It was a purely legalistic definition that had no moral binding or framework attached to it. Which, as we pointed out in the debate, well, now you've just opened the doors to, if anything is done through the constitutional framework, doesn't matter how evil it is, could be slavery, could be genocide, whatever it is, so long as you do it constitutionally, then according to them, and they bit the bullet, they said that, that's consistent with the American moral proposition.
Yeah, that's the just following orders fallacy.
Yeah, and so that's where, oh gosh, sorry. And it's not your fault, Alex. I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
No, it's not. No, not your fault at all.
But he it's funny. He bit the bullet in that he said the American moral proposition would allow for it because Pisco has a very dim view of the American moral proposition. He thinks it's this legalistic thing. Follow the Constitution. That's basically the American moral proposition in his mind. But then he said later that if you did too much violence to the Constitution, that might be morally unacceptable, even if it was legally acceptable. So there's another moral proposition that he's appealing to for that. Like, it couldn't be the American moral proposition as he defines the term, because as he defines the term, the American moral proposition allows anything that's legal. So there's another proposition there. I don't know what it is, but that's the higher moral law that he's appealing to in his own mind. And I mean, that's fine. People have different moral compasses, but it does beg the question of how to unify the country, right? Like, if we don't share a moral intuition, then we're in a tough situation. And when I talk to Christian nationalists, this is the argument they make that I think is the one that's most compelling, the one that I actually does move me a little bit, where they're saying you can't have a country if people don't share a moral system, right? Like, it can't be the case that we all just believe different things. Because if everyone has totally different moral compasses, you cannot give them very much liberty. You're going to have to constrain them because you can't trust them to do the right thing when they're given freedom. And that's a very dangerous thing. Like, I think you will see cram down in a world where people don't share. In fact, I think it entails cram down if you don't have a shared moral framework in the country.
Yeah, sorry, real quick. I was just going to finish my thought from earlier. It came back to me. That's something I want to be more intentional about, putting the burden on the people that are saying that this moral proposition is not sufficient. It's not workable, functional. It's like, okay, so what do you propose then? What is the replacement? And my guess is they're probably not going to have one. It's purely just we're just going to deconstruct, criticize what currently exists, but really have no alternative, no replacement for it. And so that's something I want to be challenging people more directly on. You have all this crap to say about the Declaration, the Constitution, but until you've got something that you're proposing can replace it that's actually workable, then we got to start actually trying to work within the system that we got.
So I kind of want to tie this back to kind of what Ryan opened with. The breakdown in the disagreement on morality that we're seeing right now is the state of politics as it is, and it leads to both sides having this unilateral disarmament argument where they need to constantly keep escalating to where the other side just escalated maybe a little bit further in order to beat them at their own game. And that leads to kind of what we're seeing in politics right now, where we're just having rule by executive order. Congress is gridlocked. You're not going to get anything through that you can get through. So Trump is going in there, changing things through executive order to show. And in a way, I think Ryan said earlier, it was unsustainable. I think our guardrails are so far holding up. What I see it as is escalation to give us a clear juxtaposition. And you can look at the border, like within just a few months of Biden leaving office and Trump coming in, our asylum was completely reformed to no longer be abused. Our border input for undocumented migrants released into the country went down to 0 for 3 months straight. It didn't take any more money. It just took executive action and proper DHS rules. And I think that juxtaposition happening every 3 years, 2 years, depending on how long the transition takes, is giving the voter a clear view of how the parties are different. At this point, when I was growing up, all you could hear was both parties are the same, advocating for the same things. That's out the window now. That is gone, because you could actually see the difference now between administrations because it moves so fast and because the next person can just come in and strike everything he did from the record and do his own record. So I think the guardrails are holding. I think in the near future, we might see Supreme Court one day say, look, we got to curb this executive power thing, because it's supposed to just be what you tell the conduct you want your branch to operate by, and it's getting to the point where you're just ruling by executive order. I hope that gets curbed anyways. I don't know if it's a likelihood, because I think it really needs to go back to Congress.
Yeah, I think ideally, gosh, yeah, I mean, it'd be nice, right? What a novel idea to have our lawmakers actually go back to making laws again. But yeah, thankfully, one of the recent developments, not to go too law nerdy, but 2024 Supreme Court did strike down Chevron deference, which is just the Spark Notes version for anyone in the audience who doesn't know. That basically, there's all these agencies that exist, right? That Congress created, these agencies that have quasi-legislative authority, quasi-executive authority, and even quasi-judicial authority. They're complete amalgamations of all three branches. They're actually abominations, probably the better word, as far as existing within constitutional structure. But the way they would create laws and pass these regulations with the force of law, under this case called Chevron, basically said so long as the agency experts say that this is what we have to do, then the courts had to defer to the experts within the agency. And it basically created this unstoppable power within the agency anytime they wanted to do anything. And the courts were toothless to do anything about it. Well, 2024 Supreme Court overturned Chevron with the pushing of. Well, I gotta look and see. I believe Biden. If it was a Biden admin, they're arguing against it. I gotta make sure on that. But it was a huge move. It was a great move as far as devolving power back away from the executive back to the courts to actually interpret the law again. And so there are moves that are being done, that are being made on that front. But I agree with you, Tyler. I don't know how much you can truly curb within the executive itself, just because of the Constitution, Article 2 does say, all executive power vests in the president, but the agencies certainly.
It's the interpretation. What Chevron did effectively was leave the authority of the interpretation either up to Congress or the courts, and took it away from the executive. The executive, who is executing, should be able to interpret the law it was a separation of powers argument, if I remember correctly, and that's something that can be handled. So I want to say early in the second Trump administration, 2 executive orders were passed, one of which was any executive agency that was going to pass a regulation had to do an economic study on how this is going to impact the economy, and the second one would allow private citizens and firms to call in front of the appropriate House committee that specific regulation into question and argue against it. So it put the regulatory power somewhat back in the hands of Congress. And then I think it was either 1994 or 2004, it was the Congressional Review Act. It allows Congress to vote on any new regulation and vote it away. It was I think that Vivek Ramaswamy was running on actually retroactively applying it to all regulation. And it had only been used once in its inception, and then it got used, I think, 16 times under the first Trump administration in the first 2 years. So Republicans started claiming back that power with the tools that they had while Trump was in office. And it's still in effect right now, to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah, it's tricky because ultimately the branch of government that has the power to rein in the executive is Congress. And we live in a world where Congress is going to be on razor thin margins for the foreseeable future, right? So if you don't have a filibuster proof majority in the Senate and you don't have a strong majority in the House, you're not going to rein in the executive. So I think when this would happen would be, like, let's say, for example, there was a true blue wave in the midterms, like an absolute blue tsunami. and you ended up with like a 65 majority in the Senate and a huge majority in the House. I'm not even sure that's mathematically possible, but let's just pretend it's possible. But then I think Congress might pass a bunch of stuff reigning in the executive. But you need that situation where you have the House and the Senate are strong and opposed to the current president. Because what we've seen is that when you have a trifecta and you have power in the Senate and the House, they're not going to rein in their own party. They won't do it. That was honestly why I voted for Biden. I thought that if I voted for Biden, everybody knew he was kind of going to go in and right the ship, and that people would take power away from the executive and restore balance. And it was the absolute opposite happened, because nobody's going to take power away from their own party.
Yeah, I'd be curious if that were to happen, if Democrats were to get that blue tsunami, would they get enough Republicans on board? Maybe like truly the principle that will act. I think there are a couple Republican senators, and Rand Paul for one, that would actually vote with the Democrats if there was something that was reining in just the unwieldy, overreaching executive. I'm curious if they could get enough to get veto proof at 67, because obviously Trump is going to probably veto it, but that'd be a curious outcome. But I know I agree. It's always a fight for the gun, and the gun just gets bigger and bigger and bigger every election cycle. And then whoever gets it uses it on the other side, and the other side hates it, and then they fight to get it back so they can use it back on the original side. And that's why I think, sorry, real quick, Tyler, I think the only workable solution, the only way the country survives, is if there is a common understanding that we cannot just let the gun get bigger and bigger and bigger and just keep using it on each other, keep bringing the hammer down. We have to work together to make the gun smaller, so that way we cannot be cramming down on each other as much. I think there's appetite for that on the right, as far as, just pure federalist principles of devolving power back away from DC and whatnot. But I don't know if there's enough appetite for that.
It's shrinking. They're getting angrier and angrier. Right now, Trump term 2 is basically taking the entire structure set up by the Democratic Party to enhance the power of the executive and using it against them. Like, look at all that tariff policy that Trump is tapping into. Go look at who passed that. Like, there are certain policies and actions he's taken, using the threatening people's licenses with the FDA if they say things they don't like. Where do we see that? I mean, who's been doing that over civil rights causes for the last 3 decades? Like, we've seen all sorts of issues that the Republicans were the principled ones on, and saying, I'm not going to resort to these tactics. We actually want to make the tactics go away. Trump is a post-conservative right-winger. He's saying, you know what? These tactics are part of government. I like power. I'm going to use all the levers that I have to access. And the people that have been using those for 30, 40 years and excusing it away are now running around with their hair on fire saying, holy shit, look at all the power he has. So anyone that's an accelerationist that wants less executive power should be pretty happy that Democrats now see it can be abused, and maybe they should tone it down a little bit instead of trying to give the executive power.
Yeah, I would hope. That's the best case scenario I can see, is like, it's the shock and awe, fire and fury campaign that just shocks everyone into like, oh wow, this really is crazy. We should work together to draw it down. My sinking feeling is that the real takeaway is going to be to double down again and say, no, we have to get it back and go even harder to prevent this from. I mean, gosh, they already tried. They tried to keep him off the ballot from even running again, and putting even not including the prosecutions either. So yeah, there already was these types of attempts to just keep ramping up. I hope so. I surely hope that, well, even now, like the last 6 months is the first time since I've been active in politics, like aware, paying attention, for like probably about 10 years now. The last 6 months was the first time I've ever heard the words free speech being uttered by the Democrats. Like, what about free speech? What about our free speech? Jimmy Kimmel, free speech. And I'm like,
Khalil as well.
It had been a while. Like, I'm old enough that I grew up in, and Eminem was pissing off the conservative right, and the left was all about free speech back then, because the people who controlled the levers of power were the Christian right. In the pre, Bill Clinton and immediately post and after era. But it's been a long time. right? It's been a long time since that happened. But I don't know. I feel like ultimately where the rubber's going to hit the road on all this stuff is the left and right don't even agree on what reining in the executive means, right? Like, and a great example is like when the right says they want to get rid of the Department of Education. Well, that actually limits the executive's power. If you're saying that the executive is no longer going to control the DOE, that is a reduction in the scope of the executive power. But the left views that as a consolidation of the executive power because of the attempt to undo the bureaucracy within the DOE, which they view as a separate branch of government that's validly constructed and should be exercising this authority outside the purview of the president. So it's a it's a mess because people aren't using words to mean the same thing.
Yeah. Hence the whole what we're running into, the issue in our debate was and that was in the post debate breakdown was probably our biggest laugh moment was we're talking about whether or not 3 just exists as a concept, and then Pisco in the post debate was, and after then we brought up pi, and Pisco says, "Pi, are we talking about the number or the food?" And it's like, I think we can use our context clues to figure out which pi we're talking about, but if you're gonna
actually, that reminds me, I totally forgot about this. Alex, I know you did a number of X spaces on the philosophy of math, as I recall. Do you have those recordings?
Yeah, those are on Mulwa's channel. I think I just did one though. It was on the philosophy of math.
Is there could I entice you to link that in the comments to this video on YouTube? Because I was looking for a good example of what we're talking about when we're asking like, is the number 3 invented or discovered? And it's actually a very deep topic, but I wasn't going to do philosophy of math in the middle of a debate. Like it's just you can't go down every rabbit hole. But I know you had a good conversation with Make Lying Wrong Again on X. It's an audio only space, but it's a good conversation. So if people are interested in the question of the philosophy of math, this would be a good resource.
Yeah, whether or not something is invented or discovered seems to be at the core of almost all of these debates. If you think about it, it's very much does it exist in our mind or does it exist objectively? And that's what I actually haven't looked into the Scottish moral realism yet, but I know a bit about moral realism, and it does seem to be at the core of all of it is consequentialism versus moral realism. I mean, I've been following politics for about 15 years now, and it seems to always boil down to that is that people want to vote for things because of the consequences that will happen as a result of them, rather than voting on principle, rather than voting on something that is good for for a healthy civilization, rather than people are thinking about whatever the consequences are. That's what I'm going to go with. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, hey, I think it does. Sorry, I do want to.
Go ahead.
I think it does make sense to me because and this is kind of what I was getting at with the common moral framework. Like one of the challenges with a consequentialist framework or a utilitarian framework, if you're going like deep down that rabbit hole, sorry, non-fon, love you, is that a lot of the work is done when you're determining the unit, right? Like how do you measure what's good and what's not good? And often how you determine that, it does all the work in your calculus of consequences. The Andrew Wilson v. Matt Dillahunty debate is famous for this because Andrew Wilson was incredibly rude to Matt Dillahunty, and the debate broke down instantly and it became this huge meme. So, it was not a good debate. Matt Dillahunty literally rage quit. But the critique that Andrew gave in that debate was actually very interesting because they were the subject was trans rights in society. And if it's not intuitively obvious whether having more trans rights increases or decreases utility, right? The answer to that question has everything to do with how you define what utility is. And it reveals the subjectiveness of the exercise. So, like even if you have a consequentialist view, if nobody agrees on the moral framework, then it all just becomes a series of gimmies, right? Like I'm going to vote for whoever gives me the most money. I'm going to vote whoever backs my identity group. You can't take a principled stance unless people agree on what the normative moral framework is where the principles operate. Because then we're just talking apples to oranges the whole time.
So can I back us up a couple comments to where you said words on the internet are being used inappropriately to take a shot at some people?
Oh, yeah.
I want to take a shot at the so-called moderates that we see online when we're talking about left-wingers. Pretty much across the board agree with the far left on almost every prescription and almost every long-term goal. The only difference is they advocate for incrementalism to get to those goals. Every single issue, it's like 80-20 issues where most people don't want trans men or trans women in women's bathrooms. 79% to 17 was the biggest poll difference I saw. And those people disagree with that. They just think that the society's not ready for it. So we have to slowly incorporate these trans rights in, whereas the far leftists would say, do it now or you're a bigot. It's essentially, if you go issue by issue, Israel, maybe they deserve to have a state, but maybe they should give up the Holy Lands and maybe move their state a little bit. And also they're committing a genocide. So like it's everything. It's granting the far left everything, but they're just appearing to be a little bit more pragmatic about it. I've noticed this. I think Erudite's probably the most obvious, but like I'd say anyone that still has Destiny on their show after he advocated for the death of his political opposition, all of those people claim to be moderates, but like every single day they're on the daily Trump, anti-Trump rage cycle. Every single thing Trump does, no matter what polling says, even that executive order about healthcare prices that has like 90% approval, they're against everything he does. There's no good he can do. The Democratic Party is always right. I see people call themselves moderates online, and I don't see much of a difference besides incrementalism and a slight dash of pragmatism in implementing the exact same things. So Democratic moderates online, I'm calling you out. Come at me.
He's an average debate enjoyer, but he's only looking for the average ones. That's the call out. If you're a good debater, stay far away. Only average debaters.
I just might not. I'll take them. I just might not enjoy it.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, I don't want to get accused of false advertising. I know we're getting down, so we'll wrap up. But lightning round. Zohran Mamdani to the White House. Is it all memes? Is there something there? A budding bromance? What are the vibes?
I think it's the perfect example of what Tyler just said, right? It's like they got along, and that was a bad thing. Now, if they had fought, that would also have been a bad thing. And if they had never met because they were oil and water, that would have been a bad thing. Like we're just kind of in a world where there is no outcome that will be cheered. So it's almost not worth talking about. Like, who cares, right? Like, for the city of New York, it's probably a good thing. Like, I think New York probably would be worse off if it lost federal funding because their mayor was feuding with the president. And I work in New York, so I'm pleased that the city's not going to be choked off. Hopefully, Mamdani can't do real damage and doesn't indoctrinate the country into thinking socialism is okay. So, we'll see.
Yeah. I think, honestly, my main takeaway, obviously, I think the funniest moment was asking Mamdani, so are you still standing by Trump being a fascist? And he started to give like the politician spinny answer. And Trump's like, no, it's okay. You can say it. And it was like, that's some classic Trump right there. I think, honestly, that my main takeaway from the whole thing, I think I'll echo Ryan. I think it was good for them to meet. And yeah, obviously, I mean, talk about what you agree on. You can always find points of agreement, and I think it's a good practice to actually keep that in mind, because there are actually a lot of solutions that are reachable if we actually put our minds to it and actually work towards them instead of just focus on everything that we don't agree on. But honestly, I've said this 3 times already, but I'm saying it again. My biggest takeaway is why I don't take Trump too seriously on, like, because obviously, like, 2 days before he was saying the Senate Democrats that said you can disobey the illegal orders. He was saying that's treasonous behavior, seditious, punishable by death. It's like, holy, wait a second, that's an insane tweet to say. Probably about one of the worst ones. That is probably up there with when he tweeted out that sometimes you can suspend the Constitution if you need to, basically. So he's got a couple all time horrible tweets. That was up there for me. But now 2 days later, he's up there with like the most radical left of all the Democrats, and they're like palling out and like talking about how much they agree on stuff. And so that's why I guess, kind of to Destiny's main argument, it's like, well, until Trump turns it down, I'm not going to turn it down. Okay, yeah, Trump will say crazy stuff, and then 2 days later, he'll talk about like how they're best buds. So I think there's a bit of like, is that ever coming from you, Destiny? No, it's not. So that's probably my main takeaway. I'll point to that example of when people talk about Trump's insane rhetoric. It's probably going to be my go-to example now. It's like he literally called for death to Democrats, and then 2 days later was chumming it up with Zohran Mamdani. So you just can't get too seriously invested on really anything he says.
I'd say actually too, like you really shouldn't get invested on things he says. We saw it with the Gaza deal. He put out something different in the first time he talked about it than what actually resulted. And Saudi Arabia came out and said that these two provisions are untenable. He uses public response to his words to adjust for later. So the end Gaza deal is something the UN just signed on to. Bunch of Arab nations just signed on to, Israel signed on to, everyone loves it except for Hamas, and like it's because he got the chance to go out there, talk about it, hear the unpopular parts, and get him the hell out of there. And I think he's doing the same thing right now. Somebody leaked the 28-point plan for Ukraine, and now people get to say, oh, this part's bad, this part's bad. And I guarantee you the finished product is going to be all these things people talk about in the public are going to be amended to be what they should be or what people like. It's just kind of how he does. So I don't have any disagreement with your guys' assessment of the meeting. I just kind of want to go to Ryan. The policy isn't what he's going to be messing up. What he's going to be messing up is the things he can control, like the police department. There was a synagogue that had a group there. This group, all they do is help Jewish people that live in the United States get real estate in Israel. That's all. They don't take political sides or statements. They're not like pro-IDF or pro-Palestine. They just help people relocate. That's their only function. They were at this synagogue. There was a giant protest outside of people screaming, make Jews afraid again, globalize the Intifada, and all sorts of things like that going on while these people were inside. Zohran Mamdani was asked to comment about it. What he said is, oh, of course those statements are bad, but the group inside, what they're advocating for violates international law because some of the land they let Jews move to where it was taken in, I think, the 1965 armistice or deal or whatnot, something like they took that land from a war. I don't remember specifically which one. And so that in Zohran Mamdani's mind violates international law. So now this group allowing people to move there is violating international law when all they're doing is following Israeli law as to what their land is. It's like, it's wild. And we're probably going to see a rise in hate crimes in New York. It's going to look pretty bad. And I think you're going to see police action that mirrors what we saw in 2020 with defunding the. That's about all I can really do.
Well, when we got to settler babies, that was probably the easiest example of like, oh wow, there really any tangential connection, no matter your moral culpability. I mean, if you were a baby who was born into one of these settlements, now you're a settler baby that's open season basically. Yeah. There's no.
I wanted to say. Oh, did I cut you off, Gen Z?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to say that I thought it actually gave me hope when I saw the two of them chumming up like that. It was you don't get to see Trump actually turn down the temperature like that. And I agree with your assessment, everybody's assessment really, but also yours, Gen Z, and that it really was a temperature decrease, and it was nice. I was laughing at it. It actually made me laugh, and it made me feel hope that maybe it is possible, to get together and not be so at each other's throats. Because I mean, when you think about Trump and Mamdani, they are absolute polar opposites, and they both believe that each other are going to destroy the country, but yet they were able to get in front of everybody and do that. I thought it was awesome personally.
Yeah, just a little bit of coverage I saw of the buildup. It was building it up like a Clash of the Titans type thing, like capitalism versus socialism, and I think maybe it's because that Zelensky meeting kind of went so bad and blew up. That's what people were kind of expecting for this one, and so then for them to come out and be friendly, I think was definitely surprising. But then it brought everybody's guard down, like you're saying, and showed, and then there were genuine moments of humor and that we're laughing at, and yeah, I think overall it was good. And all the friends on the left saying, "Oh, Trump got dog walked. Look, he's Mamdani's puppet now." And it's like, yeah, I don't think that's where we got to, but let's just appreciate her for what it is. Like that's really all I would highlight.
It's one of Trump's
Glimmer of hope.
stranger but more admirable qualities is that it's weird. He both pursues grudges with a vengeance I've almost never seen a human being pursue, and is also willing to just table them like completely at a moment's notice. So like, he'll just pursue you to the ends of the earth, and then if you have a good conversation, he'll just be like, okay, we're good.
Yeah.
So like, in a sense, it's a trait that I appreciate. Like, you can make a deal. You can actually, you don't have to be in a vendetta forever. But at the same time, he's very vindictive. So I don't quite know what to make of it. But it's certainly an interesting constellation of traits. I know we're getting close to the end. I want to make sure that Tyler, Alex, if you guys have stuff that you're plugging, your X accounts, your YouTube channels, your Discord, like whatever you guys are doing, if you want to plug your stuff and get some eyeballs on it, and I want to make sure you guys get the floor to do so.
That's cool because my wife is giving me the look. It's time. So Average Debate Enjoyer on YouTube. I just recently moved there, not monetized yet. I was monetized on Twitch, but because of their stance on Hassan Piker, letting him make anti-Israel statements, I will not stand for it. I am Israel's Iron Internet Dome. So fuck them. So I just started over everything. Give me 500 subs so I can start making some money. But even if I don't care, I'm just here for funsies. I got a podcast with Pentuple and Druid. It's pretty damn good. We just covered something really good today. So when that one's edited, I'm going to share the hell out of it. I got a podcast with Jake Varg. I did a debate with a DebateCon. And then Friday nights for debaters, people on the panel. Debate Elimination on Grid's channel. We need people to come in there. It's really good. You get 7-minute snap debates, and then the judges give you critiques and help and what you should have done here and what you could have done there. You leave there with significantly more knowledge than you started. It's absolutely worth it.
Awesome, Todd. And by the way, man, get me on the podcast sometime. What's up with that?
Oh yeah, we've been fucking.
You Pentuple and Druid? Come on, those are my people.
Pentuple is lazy as shit, and Druid is lazy as shit. So like, we actually have to record 3 in a day because it's a weekly podcast. And they just suck.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, like I said, I was back in the day, early OG YouTube, and I used to make content, and so this is actually kind of a reboot for me. And I'm feeling good about it. And I really appreciate the opportunity, guys, to come and talk about this kind of stuff. And you can look me up on X, Alex Straight like water, or George Straight. And you can see what I'll be doing. I'll be posting my new blog pretty soon. And I'm probably going to be rebooting my YouTube at some point fairly soon as well. But look me up on X.
Also, if anyone's in the market, Alex makes some absolutely sick websites. So if you're in the market for website design, hit up Alex. He's a good resource, and you can trust him with your business.
Thanks.
Well,
Sure can.
Low key, high key, because that's kind of my main update is in the work lives. I'm leaving the firm I'm currently at. I'll be launching my own firm. And so I'm currently in the process of getting all that together, including putting a website together. So I may be hitting up Alex in very near future to help out with that. But yeah, going to be very, very exciting. A lot of work. So definitely going to keep the Ordered Liberties coming once a week, every Sunday. Beyond that, the other content may not be as frequent, but of course, all my other content I make anyway is on different type of stuff. But it's all good.
And this is actually a really important point. It came up a few times this week, so I want to say this as clearly as possible. I am a lawyer, and I talk about legal issues. I am not your lawyer. and
True.
I cannot give you legal advice. And by you, I mean the people watching and listening to this. You should not, it's fine to like take my temperature, be like, hey, not going to give any specifics. Can you refer me to someone who can help me? I have a legal issue. Is there somebody you can help? I can't represent you. I have a firm. I cannot take on the clients independently. Don't tell me private details. Like anything you send me on DMs, it could be discovered. It is not confidential. I am not your lawyer. However, Gen Z is opening a firm. So if
Exactly.
you have a legal issue and you ask me about like, oh, what should I do? What I'm going to do is say, what kind of problem is it? And then I'll try to find you a lawyer who can help you. It very well might be Gen Z because he's hanging up a shingle and he can take your business.
Okay.
I just want to clarify how that works. There's limitations on, I cannot give you legal advice about your personal situations. I just can't. But there are people who can, and if we can keep the business in the family, that's wonderful. And look, if your issue is not one that it's a good fit for Gen Z, I know other people. I'm happy to help, and I'm happy to refer you out. But I want to make sure that I'm not creating any false expectations. I absolutely cannot give anyone legal advice here. In terms of this week, I saw some people getting really, really hyped in chat about the issue that came out this week where some Democrats were talking about resisting or disobeying unlawful orders in the military. If you are interested in that topic, I am deep diving that on episode 2 of Law and Order with Rob Noor tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And following the second episode of Law and Order, I'm going back on Sarah, the Raging Tomatoes channel to debate the affirmative for the right should abolish the Department of Education. So if you want to see somebody talk about ed policy and why the right should get rid of the DOE, that's at 9 o'clock or 9:15, I think, tomorrow. So they're not going to be the same stream because Rob hosts and then Sarah hosts, but there'll be at least 4, maybe 5, 6 hours of content that'll be that'll be segmented between the two streams. So I hope you join.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be a grind.
Dude, I'm gonna be fucking on from like 7 until the Sarah stream didn't end until like 1:30 in the morning. So
yeah. Oh yeah, that was a haul, but yeah, that all sounds great. Definitely go check that out. For Ryan stuff, I'll be poking my head in where I can for sure. Yeah, I'll have this the full episode for this episode of Ordered Liberty. I'll have that uploaded to the YouTube channel, the dedicated channel called Ordered Liberty Podcast. So you'll be able to get the full VOD there. Beyond that, once again, y'all heard some great plugs. Ryan, make sure to subscribe to him. We got to get him to 500. Tyler, he actually put his money where his mouth is. He left Twitch and came over to YouTube. So we got to support that. Got to get him monetized as well. Alex is making the big comeback. This is amazing. Look at this. I feel like this is a proud dad moment, even though I think I'm the youngest here, but I'm a proud dad tonight. So yeah, this is good stuff all around. But yeah. Well, I think with that said, we appreciate everyone for being here. Great showing tonight on the show and in the chat. Tyler pulling double duty on the panel and chat also. That was pretty cool, pretty epic stuff. But yeah, that is going to be it for this week. So y'all know who to follow. Y'all know what the plugs are. Watch Ryan tomorrow, and we will see you all on the next one. Bye.
Thanks for having me. I got to